Hey everybody, welcome to Psychotic Plays, and we're back with Fallout 4. And I don't really have a plan for today, but I'm gonna go on a little bit of a rant. And this rant is because, as some of you know, some of you probably don't know, I recently just graduated from EMT school. So I'm an EMTB, means I'm a basic level to ride an ambulance. A lot of the time that involves driving. Sometimes it involves helping people. But I am on the younger side. I know a lot of people that watch my channel don't consider it the younger side, but I'll be 29 come November. And I ride with a lot of older people where I work now, running private ambulance care. And I know a lot of older people. I like a lot of older people. And the one thing I hear of the most is how selfish millennials are. Now here's the thing about millennials, and we're going to say millennials is anyone between the ages of 15 and 30. Because that seems to be the age group that they kind of wrap into that moniker. I don't think that's quite true, but we'll go with it just to keep it easier. So I zoomed in. That was weird. So what they say is, obviously there's lots of mean oh, that dude has a fat man. I'm gonna wait here a second and let my there we go. Oh baby. Okay, that was pretty awesome. I'm not gonna touch on a lot of the stuff that's said about millennials, but I am gonna touch on the big thing, which is selfishness. That is something that is touched on pretty regularly, that this generation is incredibly selfish, that we don't care about anything but ourselves, and that we couldn't be bothered to care, and this and that and this and that. And I'm going to start with an example. If you don't know about it, look up the Challenger disaster. It happened back in the 80s. And it was a... thought people were fighting out here. It was a spaceship that they launched, NASA launched. It went up and detonated. All 7 crew members died. Well, that was considered a national tragedy. The nation came to a stop that day. Everyone stopped in their tracks and mourned what had happened to these 7 astronauts. And then we'll fast forward to September 11th. September 11th, national tragedy. Thousands of people died. Horrible. The nation came to a stop. So, if we look at this, I can say from the beginning that 9/11 is probably where we started seeing this change. I remember where I was on 9/11. We had just moved into a new house, and I was sitting at home, and I woke up to my parents watching the news reports. And we were told to care about that, which I understand. Of course, it was a horrible tragedy. You should care about it. But after that, things went downhill quick. Almost every day you were hearing about attacks of some sort somewhere. And I think what's happened is it's basically gotten to the point where, as a generation, we had to stop caring. We had to. I'll go ahead and compare this generation to first responders and 911 operators. You have to distance yourself from the tragedy, or you're going to be burned out. You're going to be no good to anybody. And that's what our generation, I feel, anyway, has done. We've distanced ourselves from feeling these tragedies because we don't have the resources and the time to deal with every single one. It's got to be what? Once, maybe twice a month now you hear about some major terrorist attack? Anywhere between 7 and a dozen people dead? It's a lot harder to care now because it happens so often that if we shut down every time there was a tragedy where multiple people were killed and people died and we had to mourn them, we wouldn't function as a society anymore. And that's just the cold truth of it. And I feel like that's what the older generation is not really understanding. It's not necessarily a want to... Oh, hold on. I messed up. It's not necessarily a want to be this way, but there's no other option. If we took every single tragedy to heart and we took every single thing that happened to heart, you'd have an entire population of burnt out people, and that wouldn't do any good for anybody. We just don't have the resources and the time and the energy to deal with this. It's because every single day, every single month, every single week, we see tragedy on a scale that was unknown until the early 2000s. It's every single week we're hearing about a tragedy that 10, 20 years ago would have shut down nations. And instead of just moments of silence, there would have been weeks where it would have been understandable that people didn't show up at work and went home and stayed with their families out. So that's what I think is unrealized about this millennial generation. And for a while, I was kind of like, I hate that word millennial, because there's this huge population now that, because of the internet, because of this, because of that, believes that they have a right. And I'm just here to say, as a general person, you don't have a right to anything. No one owes you anything. You don't get to say, I'm owed this because of this, or I'm owed this because of this. You earn everything you have. There's no, I deserve this because I'm so-and-so. If you live life that way, you're going to be real sad. But there is a huge population out there like that. Oh, it's down here. Yeah. There we go. So, for a very long time, I wanted to distance myself from the word millennial, because it's got a lot of bad connotations behind it, and I always wanted to say, well, I'm not one of them. But I am. That's a word that people are using to designate my generation. And they use it in a negative way. Millennial is not used in anything but a negative means. So we really have to ask ourselves, as a generation, I know a lot of my audience is in that age range, a little bit younger, a little bit older, but I think you understand what I'm getting at. But as a society, as this generation, we've had to numb ourselves to things that people couldn't even imagine 20 or 30 years ago. I mean, 1986 was 30 years ago, 31 years ago. And they couldn't even imagine that this is what it was going to be. That this is the world that come 2010 was what was for the people.
Lock's really strong.
So it's something to think about. Because I sat down and I thought about it, and it just turns into the fact that we're a generation that can't care. Not in a way that, oh, I just can't make myself care about this. Oh, I don't want to care about this. Because sometimes I do. Sometimes I want to care about what's happening in the world, but I can't. If I stopped and actually cared about every single tragedy and every single thing, I'd be done. I'd have no time for anything. And I think what you're seeing is a whole generational burnout. A whole generation of people who just have spent so long seeing tragedies every single day, whether it's on the news, whether it's in real life, whether however you're seeing it. It's a generation of tragedy. And I ultimately think that's what millennials are dealing with, is burnout. But unfortunately, normally, when people burn out, they get a chance to leave the job for a little bit, or take a vacation, or see a psychiatrist, which I'm not saying is not a bad idea. The psychiatry thing could really work. But we don't get a chance to quit the job or take a vacation, because the job is just the world. The thing that's burning us out is the world that we're left with. Huh. Killed that dude so fast he didn't know what happened. The world, the thing that's burning us out is the world that we've been left with. And other than some pretty extreme methods, we can't just quit and leave that. So we're stuck. And what do you do when you're stuck? There's two options. You get killed by a mole rat, which is probably what's about to happen, and I haven't saved in a while. That sucks. There's two options you have when you're burned out. You quit, you leave, or you... I mean, that's pretty much it. Or you keep going. But if you keep going, you're just going to continue and continue to get burned out. And I honestly think we're seeing an entire generation of burnout. An entire generation of people who see so much tragedy and so much destruction on a daily basis that it's next to impossible to take any of it seriously. Because if it was taken seriously, what would we do? That amount of tragedy on a daily basis, it's just it's unfathomable to our parents' generation and our grandparents' generation as to what this is. They can say that we're selfish and they can say that we don't care, but we don't care for the same reason that when an EMT or a paramedic or a cop or a firefighter rolls up on scene and there's bodies everywhere, they'll talk about the game that happened on TV last night while they're cleaning up, or while you're giving Narcan to the guy who's OD'd for the 3rd time that week, you'll talk about what a dumbass this kid is. It's just a method of dealing, because without that gap, we would be a generation of burnouts, and not the standard burnouts, not the, oh, I decided not to go to school and I'm just going to drop out and take my time with it and all that stuff. Not like that, but a whole generation of manic depressives that suicide has spiked up through the roof, to be honest. Suicide and drug use and everything is through the roof, because how are we supposed to move away from this? How are we supposed to take a break from life? Well, obviously some people have found methods that work for them. Drugs, suicide, the list goes on and on. And I can't say highly enough, by the way, that if you feel any of those things or use those things, you can find help. Therapists and people are just, in general, can be very helpful. And another thing there is, if you find a therapist you don't like, you can always try to get another one. They're just like any other doctor. You don't have to agree with what they say, but you should at least try to listen. So, I don't know. This is sort of a rant for me, because I do care. I really do care about people on the whole. But I am one of those people who is very, very quick to just drop the nuisance out of my life than work with it. Because there's already so much stress in my life and so many things that I have to deal with on a daily basis. Why would I risk anything else? And instead just drop it. It's not, Oh, missed. Oh, got the second one. Didn't get the first one, though. Ow. Did I die? No. There we go. Good lord. So, that's a big part of it, is what's happening that can make it so that we're so disconnected. I think it's funny that we're blamed by the older generation. Well, who raised us? But it's hard. I think it really, really is. Is that a bad guy? No? Huh, weird. It's just, how are we supposed to work with this and get better with it if it's not seen as a true issue? If all we have is hurt and pain and suffering, and that's the world we live in, you can't expect people to not try to take care of themselves, right? To be a little more cold towards everything, because there's no other option. So, I guess ultimately what I'm trying to get at is that if you're one of those people, if you're in that age group, that 15 to 30, where you feel bad because you're sitting around and everyone's just saying, oh, your generation's lazy, your generation doesn't understand, it has no sympathy for people. Oh, come on. It has no sympathy for people. And it's those violent video games. It's not the violent video games. It's not the violent movies. It's not the violent books. It's the violent world that we live in. A world where we're told we should just be appreciative if someone's willing to give us a job. We should just be appreciative that we have that we have this, that there's that. So, as a generation, maybe we should take the term millennial back. Maybe we should try to make these people understand that we don't not care because it's just easier, which part of the reason. And we don't just not care because it doesn't matter to us. We don't care because it would destroy us if we did. Absolutely, positively destroy us. If we cared about every tragedy that happened, about everything that went on in the world today, we would legitimately have no time for anything else. And tragedies today aren't treated like the challengers. Schools were shut down. 9/11 schools were shut down. People stayed home. It's just, when tragedies happen now, you're expected to go to school. You're expected to go to work. Unless it just so happens that the tragedy happened close enough to affect those. There's no expectation of suffering as a nation. If it hasn't happened to you, then we don't suffer. Then you go about your life and you make it happen. That is where we've come to. So next time you have someone older telling you that you're a generation that doesn't care, your generation doesn't do anything, your generation isn't worth the meat it's printed on, then tell them, you know what, maybe. But maybe we're just a product of our world, like everyone else, like everything else. We're just a product of what the world has given us. And unfortunately, that product is not caring. Because by not caring, it allows us to keep the world moving forward. These same people who say this would have an absolute fit if every one of us took a day off the next time someone drove a bus into a group of civilians. Or the next time there was a explosion overseas, or the next time there was an explosion in the US. Every single one of them would have nothing but complaints. Oh. 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 Oh, this is bad. Oh, that's not at all what I meant to do. Oh, God. Oh, no. Okay. Poignant, I guess, for that to... So, I've been ranting for a while now. I'm just going to upload the way it is because I haven't had a lot of time to do much. But, yeah, I just wanted to say that because, like I said, I deal with a lot of people who are older. All of them say that they wish more of my generation was like me. Well, let's be honest, I am an undiagnosed depressive with manic personality traits. So I don't know if everyone wants to be like me. But I know that there are some very good people in my generation, honest people who just want to live better, and that we are horribly misunderstood with why we don't care. Now, I'm not going to tackle the other stuff. The selfishness, the selfishness, I guess, is kind of what we tackle. But I wanted to say why I believe our generation isn't as bad as everyone says. because we have to be the way we are to keep the world functioning. If we didn't, businesses would shut down. The entire country would shut down.
I'm just trying to survive out here.
So,
like everyone else.
I didn't cover much, but
Are you from a local settlement?
I just,
I'm from Vault 111.
I don't know. I wanted to say something about it because I think our generation is better than we're given credit for.
It's because our mission here has been difficult.
I just,
Since the moment we arrived,
it's something that's been bothering me.
we've been constantly under
And I understand if this doesn't get a whole lot of views and if you guys don't like it. But that's my idea,
But you owe me an
is
explanation
that
first.
very well.
we're a generation that can't care.
Brotherhood of Steel.
Because it would happen exactly the same way it does with first responders.
On recon duty, but I'm down.
And that is that
Supplies are running low. I've been trying to send a distress call to my
we would get so burned out from caring about every time there was a tragedy,
If I may,
Proceed, Halen.
we wouldn't be able to proceed. Good Lord. We wouldn't be able to proceed
What we need is something
as
that boosts the signal.
a people. We wouldn't go to work. We wouldn't go to
It
school.
contains the technology we need.
And I feel like that needs to be acknowledged and understood
Secure the transmitter and bring it back.
before you disregard an entire generation.
Willing to lend the Brotherhood of Steel a hand?
So I'm probably going to go ahead and
Outstanding.
leave this off here. Hopefully I didn't get talked over too much by Dance there. But yeah, this is where I'm going to let it off. I think I'm just going to upload this whole thing and let you guys
Once you're on your feet, I want you to make certain.
put your 2 cents in.
All right, civilian. It's time to prove your worth.
I
The police station and resupply yourself. Then let me know.
I just wanted to give my 2 cents on that because I spend all day listening to people who talk shit about our generation. I spend all day listening to older people who think that they're better than we are, that they're better than everybody because their generation had this, their generation had that. Our generation has something of its own. And I want to know what you guys think about that. And you know what?
Idea to keep Howard and Dance waiting.
I understand if people don't want to talk about this. I understand if you guys say, haha, you know what, you're pretty entertaining. How about we just stick to playing games and making jokes? I understand that. I was annoyed and bothered. So I wanted to talk about it. If you guys have any thoughts on this, please let me know in the comments below. Tell me about it. Tell me what you think. If not, well, I've had my 30 minutes. Wow, 30 minutes. Sorry about that, guys. And hopefully you at least enjoyed something about this. And if not, well, then, as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.